Hey everyone, have I got news for you?
What the heck?
Squeeze
No
me?
way.
No way.
What?
Our first user on TikTok comes from @political_discourse. And this video is about voter suppression in Arizona. We've got voter suppression all over the country, but in this particular video, there's going to be a picture for our listeners on the radio that you can't see, where there are two individuals in full tactical gear with ski masks covering their whole faces, except for their eyes, and brimmed hats. And they're sitting by or on the back of a long bed pickup truck with weapons. This is also important information on where to report voter suppression by calling the Voter Protection Hotline. If you see voter suppression tactics in North Dakota, call 866-638-8637. North Dakota voter suppression can be reported to 866-638-6837. If you see voter suppression tactics in Minnesota, you can call 833-335-8683. That's 833-335-8683. And you can find your state to go and report voter suppression by going to the website votesaveamerica.com.
Well, guys, the voter intimidation has already started here in Arizona. We've got some people sitting outside of the Maricopa County drop box in Mesa, Arizona. Now, I'm going to show you a photo of these folks, and you tell me if you think that they're liberal or conservative, okay? What do you think? Now, imagine you're driving up to the drop box, you've got your ballot in your hand, you're excited, and you see Tweedledee and Tweedledum here sitting outside waiting for you with tactical gear on and face masks so you can't see who they are. Just chilling, watching, no big deal. Like, look, I'm a veteran. And if I pulled up and saw that, I'd be like, really? I don't know about that. So here, check this out. There's actually a list that if you see something like this going on, you can call someone. So I'm going to step out of the way, let you screenshot it. Bam, there you go. So if you see anything, call somebody, okay? As always, much love, keep fighting, let's win these elections, because way too much is riding on it.
Our next user is @West Texas Progressive. West Texas Progressive on TikTok. You can find a lot of videos about voting right now, specifically in West Texas. This creator is creating this account to send the message that they need rural voters to show up this election. Otherwise, voter suppression tactics could spread all across the state of Texas. And this TikToker refers to the newly appointed Secretary of State under Greg Abbott, who's up for re-election, by the way, meaning that the Secretary of State could lose his job if Abbott is not re-elected. But he has been sending investigators, quote-unquote, to Harris County to supposedly observe the vote, along with who he refers to as Texas's quote-unquote criminal attorney general.
Early voting hasn't even started in Texas, yet voter suppression is well underway. Look, I haven't talked about Texas politics in a couple of weeks, so please interact so this gets traction. It's an important story. So the Texas Secretary of State, who was appointed by Governor Greg Abbott, meaning if Abbott loses his re-election, this guy loses his job. And he just announced he's sending investigators to Harris County to observe the election. Our criminal attorney general, Ken Paxton, also announced he's sending representatives to Harris County to deal with legal issues. Look, Harris County is our most populous county, and it always has long lines to vote. There's also a large number of black voters there. This is meant to slow down the voting process and discourage people from participating in the midterms, and there's not much we can do about it. But for those of us in Texas who are not in Harris County, what we can do is make sure that everybody in our community goes out to vote. If rural Texas can increase voter turnout by 5 to 6%, we can flip the state.
Our next user is @Johnny Mavro 68. That's Johnny, Johnnny, Mavros, Mavros 68. And this video is also about voter suppression through voter ID laws. You might have heard of some of the older voter suppression tactics like poll taxes and such. Well, the new voter suppression tactic is voter ID registrations. This complaint includes the story of a nearly 18-year-old high school student that was not permitted to vote in 2016's election because she didn't have a state-issued ID at the time, and the nearest DMV office to her was only open once a month. She would need to travel more than 50 miles round trip to a DMV office with more generous hours in order to get a state-issued ID that was acceptable in her state. But she'd never driven before, and there was no public transportation in order for her to get to the DMV from her hometown, to either DMV from her hometown. Let's take a listen.
So let me tell you about voter ID, because that's, again, one of those things like the poll tax that sounds logical and rational on its face, but is nasty, wicked behind. So what it says is we have all of this massive, rampant voter fraud. Voter fraud, voter fraud. And so we don't think it's too much to ask for you to show an ID to be able to vote. Well, what they don't tell you is, one, there's not all of this massive, rampant voter fraud. Justin Levitt, a law professor out of California, did a study. From 2000 to 2014, there were 1 billion votes cast in the United States. That's Carl Saganish. Billion votes cast. There were 31 cases of voter impersonation fraud out of 1 billion votes. That's the massive, rampant voter fraud. But if you say it enough, it conjures up a sense of reality. Then what they don't tell you is that not any ID will work. Your library card won't work. It is a government-issued photo ID. But then again, not all government-issued photo IDs. So in Texas, that immediately 2 hours after the Shelby County v. Holder decision, they said you must have a government-issued photo ID to be able to vote. But your student ID from a state college or university does not count. But your concealed weapon card does. This is how you're able to carve out your electorate, by carving out the types of IDs that give people access to the ballot box. In Alabama said you must have a government-issued photo ID to be able to vote. Then said, but your public housing ID does not count. It doesn't get more government-issued than public housing. But 71% of those in public housing in Alabama are African American. And the NAACP Legal Defense Fund found out that for many, it was the only government-issued photo ID they had. But then there's the driver's license. Well, Governor Bentley, listening to his mistress, you can't make this stuff up. And I'm like, Lord, that's got to be some really interesting pillow talk. Baby, you know what I want? Ooh, what? I want you to shut down the Department of Motor Vehicles in the Black Belt counties. Okay. And that's what he did. He shut them down. But for fiscal reasons, he had to balance the budget. Well, what that meant then for those who lived in the Black Belt counties was that they were going to have to go 50 miles to get a driver's license. But I say to you, if you don't have a driver's license, how do you get there? Well, you think public transportation, except Alabama's ranked 48th in the nation in terms of public transportation. So this is how you create an obstacle based on a lie. Government-issued photo ID. And then you create an obstacle to the obstacle. Your public housing ID doesn't count, and you're going to have to go 100 miles round trip in order to get a driver's license to vote. Voter ID.
And now, you know.
I feel smarter now.
Thanks.
That's so... Oh, I get it.
Amazing.
Cool.
Whoa.